Welcome back to Rip City Rundown. This is episode 13 of the podcast, and we have some news to catch up on. So in the podcast, we will be talking about the Jason Kidd situation. We will be talking about Chauncey Billups as well as a possible candidate for the head coaching job. We'll talk about Olshey's press conference. That just happened a little while ago, a couple hours ago. Lots of people have made comments on that, and you'll hear our takes on that. We'll talk about potential CJ trades, potential suitors, because if we were going to make a big roster move, it would most likely be for CJ. And finally, we'll answer some of your questions you asked in the Q&A on the Instagram, I believe. Yes, on the Instagram. So, let's start with Jason Kidd. So, Terry Stotts gets fired. If you saw our video on that, if you haven't, go watch it. It's just an honest take reaction to Terry Stotts as the coach for the past 9 years for the Blazers. But Jason Kidd's name was immediately, almost hours, minutes after Terry Stotts got fired, as a name that was going to be heavily involved in this coaching search.
Yeah, right after the firing, possibly 2 hours following it, you got Damian Lillard going to Chris Haynes, who tends to be kind of the guy Damian Lillard goes to when he discusses news or things he wants to say to the media. But obviously he went to him and he said, Jason Kidd's the guy I want. And everyone went crazy. All of Portland went crazy just because of Jason Kidd's past history.
Mm-hmm.
And we can get into that and just reasons. In my opinion, there's 3 reasons, and we're getting into this, why Jason Kidd is now not going to be the coach. Because obviously he has taken his name out of the running.
Which is interesting.
Yeah, he said his quote is he didn't want to make it awkward for Dame and the Blazers organization while trying to hire the coach.
But just to touch on Jason Kidd's past, so I think it was back when he was playing, back in maybe 2001 or 2000, he had a domestic abuse case against him. And people make mistakes. I don't believe in holding people to their mistakes. I think they're allowed to grow and to grow for the better. However, I think if Jason Kidd was, let's just put it this way, Jason Kidd is not a very good coach anyway, in my opinion. He was at Milwaukee. He was at the Bucks for a while. He developed Giannis. He went to the Nets and really did not have a good stint there. But I just don't think he's a good coach for this team. And on top of that, the allegations not having the background, the clean background that I would want for head coach, I could not support it. However, the sole reason is not based on the domestic abuse case. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of really was no, Dame, how could you request Jason Kidd, for someone who did a domestic abuse case? And yes, they have a point, but yeah, they have a point because it's still something that's, a very terrible thing that he should not have done. But this is 20 years ago, and I think he's grown, and I think he's shown he can be a decent coach. I just don't think he's the one for us. But it's the domestic abuse case is not the sole reason why he should not be the coach.
Yeah, and when I say stupid, it's not because that's a stupid reason for you not to want him, but Dame has major connections with him. I mean, he went to the same high school as Jason Kidd in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
And a former point guard, Dame's going to want to learn from one of the best point guards of all time. So Dame wanting him doesn't mean Dame's a bad person. Dame probably has never seen the bad side of Jason Kidd. Neither has half the world because Jason Kidd's...
To be honest, I didn't even know that was a thing.
I knew he was kind of a bad boy, but half the NBA is bad boys. I didn't know about this whole situation, and obviously that's a big deal, but it was, again, 20 years ago. But we're not going to have to worry about him.
Let's talk about so we'll keep going on the timeline. So Jason Kidd, his name gets thrown in the hat, and then I think the next morning it's Jason Kidd himself takes himself out of the running.
Right before that, we had a little news again from Chris Haynes. His quote was, "The Blazers will involve Lillard in the process," and this is wow. We were thinking that Jason Kidd was going to be the coach, and but ultimately the franchise front office will make the final call. So I mean, take that for what it's worth, but a lot of people were happy to hear that.
I think that just means they're going to consult Dame as much as they can in the process, make him feel part of it. We don't want players picking coaches because then Dame's not going to be held accountable by the coach if he's just going to be buddy-buddy with them. So it is the front office's final call. However, I think involving Dame in the process is a good thing, to keep Dame engaged with the team. Because right now we're not supplying Dame with talent that's necessary to win a championship. So back to where we were going with this. Jason Kidd, he takes himself out of the running, and immediately people are like, what the heck, what just happened? 12 hours ago, he was going to be – it almost looked like, Twitter rumors and rumors on the internet go around way too fast. There's probably no, true, Jason Kidd is going to be the coach, but everyone is overreacting and thinking this way.
So when I saw that news, I did my digging. I just looked at everyone's reactions and saw people's opinions, and I formulated 3 different reasons why he possibly could. And all of them there's more likely ones that it probably is, and there's ones that just long shots, but just keep it in the back of your mind. There is Jason Kidd saw the hate he was getting from Portland. He was like, I don't want to have to deal with this.
So that's the first reason.
That's not the most. That's a very likely reason, but I think the 2 first reasons I'm about to state are similar in likeliness. Then there's also, I think, Neil or someone with the Blazers could have been like, Jason, we're probably not going to hire you, so come out publicly and say you're going to drop your name out, just so we don't piss off Dame here.
To save face.
And then the third one is just that's least likely, but it's something that you still have to keep your mind on. Is Jason Kidd knows something we don't with Dame, and maybe Dame didn't give him his full 100% commitment to his time, and say he gets a 3-year contract. Dame was like, no, I'm not gonna fully commit to you. We'll see how this first year goes. And Jason Kidd doesn't want to run that risk of having to coach a rebuilding team.
That's true. I do want to say Dame leaking who he wanted as coach really put it was a struggle, and I don't think it was a good move, looking back. Again, I do not agree with letting players pick coaches. Dame can definitely go to Neil and behind closed doors and be like,
not publicly.
Yeah, but going publicly puts pressure on the team, because if you go with Jason Kidd just to please Dame, you're getting a coach that's not going to hold Dame accountable, and a coach that's frankly not that good, in my opinion. And then if you don't hire Jason Kidd, even though Dame publicly said he wanted to, then everyone else is like, you're not doing what Dame wants. Dame,
And all these other coaches are going to be like, well, Dame didn't want me. Why would I want to come there? I'm just the second option. Mm-hmm. I wasn't your actual first option, so it could be a little rift. But I think they would grow.
I think having Jason Kidd himself drop out of the running kind of put out a lot of fires there. So that was kind of the whole situation there. And to kind of close that part, I am thankful that it worked out the way it did. I mean, I wish it didn't, but I don't want Jason Kidd to be our coach. How about that? And that's not going to happen. But let's talk about Chauncey Billups.
And just other candidates.
Other possibilities, yeah. So Chauncey Billups, assistant for the Clippers, who won their Game 7 against Dallas yesterday. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. That game right there, that Game 7, had some implications for possible trade scenarios for both teams. I'm not saying
but
involving
now
us.
We've seen Neil's conference that we're about to get into. That might not be a real thing.
However,
yeah.
So back to Chauncey Billups and the Clippers. So Chauncey Billups, he has not had a head coaching gig yet. However, he's well respected in the league. Again, another player's coach. He also has his own spotty history, which again, I'm not gonna make it not as important as it is, because it's still a very important thing to not to hold against him, but to hold him accountable to. But he has been a spotless resume. He has been a great citizen since that happened. And for those who don't know, I think it was sexual assault or sexual abuse.
And it hasn't completely been confirmed that it happened, but there are allegations out there, him and his teammates.
Mm-hmm. So he's kind of got a similar situation, but Chauncey Billups apparently is a high up on the list, even though, again, this Neil Olshey press conference we need to get into, because there's some quotes he said that kind of go against what we're going to say here. But I think it was reported, I don't know who reported that Chauncey Billups, or that Jason Kidd got out of the running because one of the reasons because he thought Chauncey Billups was a lock to be the coach.
I don't know if this is a valid source, but tweeted out by Peter Vexi, I don't know how to say it. He said, why would Jason Kidd rapidly remove his name from consideration, you ask? A Portland person in the know submits it's because he knows, or he knew, Chauncey Billups is a living lock to get the job.
Yeah, and with all those
take
tweets,
that for what it's worth.
You got to take it with a grain of salt. Might not necessarily be true, but still important, because I think Chauncey Billups will be on the final shortlist because he has a lot of potential to be a good coach. He hasn't had a coaching job yet. He's been a very good assistant. But just keep an eye on Chauncey Billups. I think he's going to be there at the end. Other possible candidates, 3 thrown out at the beginning, it was Mike D'Antoni, who leads a revolutionary offense. He had his offense in Houston with James Harden and the small ball, the ultra small ball, the microscopic ball, if you will. His name was thrown around. Jeff Van Gundy, the ESPN announcer. He was thrown in there as well.
Juwan Howard.
I would like him, but I think he's going to stay at his alma mater, Michigan, for more than one season. He just got there.
But and who knows if that's actually like a valid list, because according to Neil, they haven't even called anybody or put a list together. And should we just go ahead and start talking about the Neil Olshey press conference? Because there was a lot of things said in this press conference that have a lot of implications on the Blazers' offseason. Some people are saying that this was Neil's worst press conference ever, and I didn't watch it, but I've seen
I think
quotes.
People need to be careful with, yes, he maybe wasn't a great presser, but I think a lot of times Blazer fans, and I think fans in general, they let their opinion on someone that they don't like they already don't like Neil, so they're pre-biased to not liking Neil. Obviously, they're going to think the press conference sucks. So it's like, if you already have a preconceived notion that you don't like the guy, then obviously you're already going to not like the press conference. So I think a lot of people are kind of over Neil. He's working with what he has. Portland's a small market. They're not just going to be trash like the Lakers for years and go out and get LeBron James. That's just not going to happen. We have to build it up. And I think he's done a good job, working around the edges, but I think the time has come to make a significant move. But he kind of put a damper on that today a little bit. But what I was saying, Neil Olshey, he's doing his best. I think he could be better. But just because you don't like the guy doesn't mean he's like the worst GM in the league. I think he's better than a lot of GMs.
I think he is too. But I do think that he did make a couple missed signings this offseason, like just looking at what has happened in the past and what we'll have to face, like just a couple of like the Canner, the Mello, while they had their moments in the season, they just and it could just be because of the matchup, they're just not playoff basketball players, I guess. But he put a lot of blame on coaching staff and coaching, and he was like, a lot of the quotes he said was like, I put together a good roster. The fact that the defense is bad is not on the roster. And
so he goes,
you just gotta have
there's just a couple quotes. He said we benefited from the offense that Neil Olshey created with his roster construction. I guess he wanted to take credit for that, which is fine. But we've been hit on the defensive side of the culture, defensive culture within the organization. Again, as you all know, 29th in defensive rating this season, second worst in the league. And he really blamed that on coaching and on Terry Stotts in particular, because I don't know. He said the roster was good enough to be better than 29th in the league, which I agree with.
I do too.
I think we could have been a 20th ranked defense. It would have helped the team. So I think that's a fair statement. Now, it looks kind of crappy to just push the blame all on Terry, but it's a valid point nonetheless. Another quote he said was he did not hear the comments that Yusuf Nurkic made post-game or after Nuggets Game 6, which is a little questionable. It's like, how did you not hear that? So that was
I think that's him just avoiding the question. One that I saw that stood out, again, was kind of him like putting a little blame on Stotts. He said when he was asked about whether he feels pressure for his job, he said in this instance, the first round loss, the defense was not a product of the roster. Again, just saying that with a better coach, sure, we might have made it out of the first round, but still, you want to see someone take a little bit of accountability.
Yeah.
Just say, like, we could have made a couple different changes here and there.
He also talked about Norman Powell a little bit, saying how he traded for Norm at the deadline with hopes of Norman being a part of the future, which you don't know what that means, a.k.a. he wants him to re-sign this summer, which I think would be a huge get for the Blazers if they could re-sign Norm. I'm not really sure where Norm stands, to be honest. I have no idea.
What do you mean, like money-wise?
No, I have no idea where Norm stands on if he wants to return or not. Like if he got the same deal from another team.
No.
I don't know. Last quote we'll go through with Neil Olshey said was that they don't actually have a list yet with coaching changes, which is fine. You want to take your time. But I did see that they're going to, I think it was you start with 20 to 20. They're going to start with 20 to 25 coaches, kind of like a list, and they're going to slowly like narrow it down. Then they're going to do interviews when they feel comfortable. But they've not reached out to anyone or asked for permission to interview anyone yet. So everyone just needs to calm down a little bit with their coaching, the coaching hire. It needs to happen at some point, obviously, before we get into free agency and stuff. So we know which the coach can utilize his system.
Yeah, and
can implement his system.
I think this coaching decision is going to be huge because another thing he said, and we're just kind of just going through the significant quotes of the press conference, was for anyone, and when anyone he's talking about coaches that they could hire, he said for anyone to advance in the process, they're going to have to prove that they can do that, basically saying to improve defensively without a ton of roster changes, hinting that maybe we might not see the big blockbuster trade. And people saw that quote and they were like, well, even if you trade CJ, you'll still probably keep 4 of the 5 starters. But I think a big roster change would be trading your second best player over the past 5 years. So that doesn't mean it's not going to happen and opinions change and his mind could change. But at the moment, it seems like he's pretty dead set that the main issue of this team was Terry Stotts.
Yeah, I think what he's saying is I have no doubt that he is, kind of sniffing around the league, looking for what CJ's value is, trying to gauge trying to gauge interest. I think he's saying he's not going to automatically just trade him for expiring contracts and picks. We're trying to get him for a win now player, and if that's not there, then don't trade him. I think that's what he's saying. Don't be surprised if I trade him, but don't be surprised if I don't. If the right deal's there, whatever to make the team better.
In the end, it's all about utilizing Dame's prime and Dame right now, and that's why we're involving Dame in coaching searches and everything. I mean, again, he made it clear. He was like, we're going to run a broad, expansive search, and Dame will play an interval role in the process.
He also said Dame is not making any demands when it comes to the coaching hire.
Which is kind of odd to hear after the Jason Kidd
Yeah, I think situation. Now that Jason Kidd's situation's behind us, I don't think Dame will make any demands. I think he'll just kind of offers input here and there, which is good. Let's talk about potential CJ trades. That's the next thing we're talking about, because if Neal is going to improve this roster, it's probably going to come from trading our starting shooting guard, CJ McCollum, who is an undersized player at best, average. No, he's not even average. He's not even an average defender. So it's interesting to see what value he has.
We've been kind of scoping around the league, watching teams in the playoffs, maybe
and
hoping
this
a
is
team
why,
loses.
This is why I said earlier that the Clippers and Mavericks Game 7 was so important, because the Clippers have title aspirations. If they had lost that game, potentially they wanted to not blow it up, but kind of start fielding.
They might be forced to, given Kawhi's a free agent and could leave.
Kawhi's a free agent and could leave. I don't anticipate that happening, but if it did, you might as well deal Paul George too. And start a quick rebuild. Now, also the Mavericks. Talk about the Mavericks really quick. Kristaps Porzingis said he's not happy. He feels like he's an afterthought instead of a co-star, which unfortunately is going to be what it's like when you are 7-3 and you chuck transition threes and grab 4 rebounds a game.
All I'm saying is a Kristaps trade would be the highest risk trade we could do.
I don't support it.
I don't either.
Because I don't think the Mavericks need another guard.
No, and it's not. It doesn't even technically have to be
maybe for Nurkic.
His value is so low right now, but his potential is so high. If you can just unlock what he had in New York, that if it was not giving up really anything at all, I'm talking I don't even know, Derrick Jones Jr. and Nasir Little. His value, he averaged 13 points, and he's on a bad contract, which is bad given his production right now, but if he somehow got back to what
I agree.
Again, I'm not supporting that. That's just
so possible CJ trades. The obvious one is with Philadelphia. Now, Philadelphia's down to the Hawks 1-0 right now. If they lose the series in the second round, they could very well be going down the line of thinking Tobias Harris, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons. It's not going to work. Which is very true. Philadelphia needs a scoring guard. They need scoring.
That's been where CJ has been linked to ever since he started, and it used to be CJ for Ben Simmons, but sure, that could still happen given Ben Simmons, he could not play well in the playoffs, but the key one we've been looking at is Tobias Harris.
And maybe Matisse Thybulle thrown in there.
Matisse Thybulle would be a huge pickup too. It's so hard as a Blazer fan to know what CJ's value is because
we're biased.
We're biased. We think CJ's good, but I'm also I'm not. For me personally, I don't think there's any chance we could get Tobias and Matisse for just CJ.
I think it's somewhere in the middle of Okay, it's obviously somewhere in the middle between the optimists and the pessimists, but let me explain what I mean. So I'm an optimist with CJ's value. I think for some reason, like CJ is very high value across the league, which is probably not true. But I also think that people undervalue CJ as well. I think there are a lot of teams across the league that could be like, when Dame was out, this guy was averaging 28. And he's a very good scoring guard. And I think he could very easily lead the team. And I think there's a lot of rebuilding teams that could go for CJ for not as much as we think.
I think teams that would trade for CJ is either trading teams that are like, what are you trying to say here? Trading things that are like kind of in the middle, either pushing for a championship and like Philly and need that ball handling guard, a scorer. I just don't think a rebuilding team is really going to go for CJ unless they're like trying to push for the playoffs. Just because CJ is like, 28, 29.
For a long time, it was CJ to the Magic for Aaron Gordon.
Yeah, that's Aaron Gordon is not on CJ's level. One that I've seen a lot is, or not I've seen a lot, I saw and I thought it was really good, was CJ to the Pacers for Miles Turner and Karis LeVert. Now, you would probably throw in another piece like a Derrick Jones Jr., but because Miles Turner is not as valuable as CJ McCollum in the scheme of just basketball. But
sorry, you can keep going.
But I was going to say Miles Turner would be super valuable for us in our scheme. Like CJ McCollum's better, but Miles Turner might be more important for us.
And that might be gettable to an extent because Miles Turner's a little unhappy in Indiana right now, and their two kind of center lineup with Sabonis and Turner and has not worked out. And they might want to go with Sabonis. He's a star at this point, and Turner's kind of being pushed out.
Because the key to building a good defense is starting from the inside out. You look at the best defenses in the league. You look at the Jazz; they have Rudy Gobert in the middle. You look at Philly. You look at even the Hawks have turned it up defensively in the playoffs because they have Clint Capella in the middle. If you could have a guy like Miles Turner in the middle, your defense is automatically just going to get better because you're not going to have to double team to the paint because you have Miles Turner in there blocking every shot. And the only reason I say Karis LeVert too is because, not to start, Karis LeVert would be our scorer off the bench. And if they don't really want to commit to Karis LeVert, they could go CJ, who's by far better than Karis LeVert, and then just move on from the Miles Turner-Sabonis duo.
I could see that happening, especially because LeVert, defense-wise, is not as much. It's better than CJ, but not by much. And CJ's a much better offensive player. CJ's way better. But if you re-sign Norm, LeVert coming off the bench, I think, would immediately be our sixth man.
Yeah, I mean,
because our bench is the thing about the Blazers and the thing about Terry is that, like, when I think of the bench, I think of Simons, Kanter, and Melo. But we had Nasir Little on the bench, Ronnie Hollis-Jefferson on the bench.
And look, you've always
Derrick
said, look back
Jones
at
Jr.
the 2019 Western Conference Finals teams. None of those players technically should really be getting rotational minutes. But when they did, they actually played really well. Evan Turner was not that good of a rotational player.
But he had 11 points in games.
But he was turning up in the playoffs. So just by, literally, I bet if you play Derrick Jones Jr. in this past series, he's going to play clamps defense on Michael Porter Jr., and he's going to get a couple dunks maybe, get a three-pointer, and end up with 7 to 9 points. Like, that's all you need in the end. Just start with the defense.
Another potential CJ trade, I saw Miami as a possible one because
they don't really have that scorer either.
No, they don't really have a scorer. Jimmy Butler, I don't think would be gettable. I think he might be. They're planning on re-signing him to a max. I saw something like Tyler Hero and like Duncan Robinson and one other Precious, Achua.
I think that would be
a sign and trade.
That again, that's not a bad package.
I think we get better though.
But yeah, you could get better if you are just have to deal CJ. I mean, Duncan Robinson is going to shoot the ball well, but he's not going to solve your defensive issues.
Another thing I saw was Boston, and this one would have to include Nurk. Now, this is why I don't. Again, this probably is the biggest reach of all, but I think there's two ways you can go with Boston. Obviously, Boston was a 7 seed this year. Their team is not really going anywhere. They need to make another move. They need a center. They need a center bad. So if you go, there's two ways you can do this, in my opinion. You can go CJ and Nurk plus whatever, like as the core, and picks for you can get Jaylen Brown because. That would be fantastic because, in my opinion, I think at some point Boston's kind of like Dame and CJ to an extent, two very similar players, and Tatum and Brown, who kind of do similar things. and kind of probably overlap in skill sets. And I could definitely see. I don't think maybe we offer the best deal. They're not going to trade Tatum. He's been an animal in the playoffs, but Brown could possibly be moved. Now, if it was for someone smaller, you could go like Nurk, or I don't know. If you're going a player down, you can go like Marcus Smart. I think he could be a good energizer off the bench.
He would definitely fit.
But if it was CJ, Nurk, or even like if you somehow kept CJ, see, in my opinion, the dream offseason is this. It's obviously will not happen, but do the CJ for LeVert and Turner. Maybe you got to throw something else in with CJ. Maybe Derrick Jones Jr.
Yeah.
Get Turner as your starting center. Then Nurk Little in the farm of picks for Jaylen Brown, and just try to fleece Brad Stevens and saying Nurk is a top end center and it'll put you over the hump.
Another guy we saw that came out. This is just moving a different direction on teams, but you saw the Cat report. That was a pretty big story, like Saturday morning or Friday morning.
Not in love with Cat.
I'm personally not either. He brings a great offensive skill set. I mean, he's top 3 offensive center in the league, and he brings average defense. I think he would rim protect okay.
Not at Nurk's level.
Yeah, not at. I think. I think Nurk is a great defender. He's not a rim protector.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Miles
definitely a
Turner
difference. Miles Turner's everything. I think that's
if
why
we got
really
Miles Turner for CJ. I think that's the move. Okay, here's another one.
You have to get more if you're trading for CJ.
Yeah, another huge stretch again, but Paul George. Do they do CJ and Nurk? They also need a center, in my opinion. I don't know if Zubats is the answer over there.
Yeah.
But that would be with a Kawhi trade. So I'm not sure Paul George would. Also, do we want Pandemic P in the playoffs? That's another question you got to ask yourself.
I don't know.
But many potential. And there's the other option of we just don't trade CJ and run back a tiny lineup. That's also
See,
true.
That's the thing. I just don't really want to see this 3-guard lineup again, because no matter how good of a defensive coach is, it's just going to struggle defensively. Norman Powell is a solid defender, but he's not supposed to be defending threes.
Question, no one's talking about this, and maybe it's because you can't do it, and I might just be dumb, but can you use Norman Powell in a sign-and trade?
I don't think you can, since he has a player option.
Okay.
But...
And keep CJ.
He maybe
if he doesn't want to stay.
I think he actually could if he wanted to. Similar to like
someone did
Kevin
that.
Durant with D'Angelo Russell. Like Kevin Durant, it's literally like you can't choose to do the sign and trade. It's basically the player that you're getting rid of is being either nice enough to say like I'll sign with you as long as you just trade me here, making it hence the sign and trade, or it's just the team that the player is going to doesn't have the cap space, so they have to do a sign and trade.
Mm-hmm.
So, still, I like Norm. I think Norm would be a great backcourt partner.
Norm would not be as good as CJ offensively, but it'd balance the team more.
It would definitely balance the team more. If you could just trade, like I really like that. And then maybe even you flip Nurk for some sort of wing. I don't really know what type of team has a wing that is in need of a center. That's more realistic than Jaylen Brown or Paul George.
Would you rather, this is an interesting one, would you rather do the CJ package for Miles Turner, Karis LeVert, or with basically CJ and Miles Turner as the core of that deal, or CJ Tobias Harris? And keep Nurk.
The issue with Nurk is just like he's kind of been, I think he hit his, I'm not going to say he hit his peak, but like he was really good and trending upward before he got hurt. But like just, it's so unfortunate that he got hurt. I just don't know how much better he can get at this point. And he's about to be on the last year of his deal, and
he might not re-sign.
Knowing him and watching that press conference, something's going on with him.
And we have him for a steal with $12 million a year, 4 years, $48 million, and he's probably going to want a pay raise.
Like, I just think it's so weird that he like says this is the best group of guys I've been around, but then kind of is like, I don't know if I want to be back in this situation.
Yeah, if you didn't know, that was
weird.
Nurk's post-game comments after the Game 6 loss to Denver. Let's move on to the Q&A. So, y'all went on the Instagram and swiped up on the story and wrote questions to us, and we are going to answer them.
I'll go first.
You want to go first? Okay.
There are some questions in here.
You just want to start at the top?
That are kind of just far-fetched. Some of them are not technically related to basketball, but we got something from Something Goodish. we're going to shout you guys out just to give you guys credit for giving the questions. But he goes, ooh, think we're going to get any new Dalla tracks, a.k.a. Dame Dalla, any new rap songs
I say
this
yes.
offseason? I think we could definitely see some.
I say we get like single or something.
What's your favorite Dame Dalla song?
My favorite Dame Dalla song. Can you go to his library or his what do you call it? What do you call it? It's his his catalog. I like if it's just him. He has some features that I like, but my favorite
the Shaq diss track
song.
is up there.
Oh, the Shaq diss track is up there. I really like Moneyball.
That's a good one.
And
Ricky
the reason
Bobby.
why I like Moneyball is because in the music video, CJ's in it, which is pretty funny. But I do think we get some new Dalla tracks. What about you? You think we get some new Dalla tracks?
I think we do. I see a little inspirational stuff in the offseason.
Talk about
losing.
This is kind of funny. I forgot what song it was, but one of the first songs it was in. I think it was in Soldier of the Game or Soldier in the Game, the first song he had on SoundCloud. He had a line where he was like, something like I played last game like I'm flew game six, something like look what I did game 6. Obviously referring to the Rockets, but I thought of game 6 against Denver, and then I thought about that line. So that's kind of funny.
Sad.
Okay, next question. This is from, we'll go with C. Zizzles. He goes, or she, shouldn't have traded GTJ.
And we're going to pair this one up with another one from Miles Darnell 43, where he says, we would have won that series with Gary Trent. I've seen a lot of people say this. You want to answer this first?
Yeah, I'll start. So this is a 2-part question. I think I can't really answer the shouldn't have traded Gary Trent Jr. left yet. I can't answer that question yet, and here's why. If we re-sign Norman Powell, I think the trade is great. If we don't re-sign Norman Powell, I agree. We should not have traded Gary Trent Jr.
But we could have seen the same thing happen with Gary Trent Jr. leaving.
That's true. So now this is an interesting question for you. Would Gary Trent Jr. get paid more than Norman Powell this offseason?
A lot of people have said they're similar in money, but honestly, this is what I was going to say, is Gary Trent Jr., right when he got traded, he had his moments. He had a buzzer beater and he had like 44 points in a game. Other than that, he really regressed defensively this year, I saw. He peaked in the bubble, defensively at least, and everyone's saying oh, our defense is so much worse than Norm. Gary's a dog on defense. I love Gary, and Gary was one of my favorite players, but he did definitely regress defensively. Now,
saying we would have won that series with Gary Trent Jr., I think you could make that argument because Gary Trent Jr. is a big shot maker, and I think if he stays in Portland, he's making. You saw Norman, you saw Melo, you saw CJ even just not hit shots down the stretch, or when Dame set him up. I think it's a stretch to say we would have won the series, but I think Gary Trent Jr. would have made the shots that other guys missed. Just because he just seemed in the bubble, he just seemed to always hit them.
Would we have dominated a game 4 like we did without Norm, though? Because Norm went 11 for 15 and had 29 points.
True. Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I think Norman Powell in the long run, if we re-sign him, is going to be much better for this team. And I honestly, you can't say this yet because it's been so soon, but I commended Neil on selling high on Gary Trent Jr. I think he was at peak value.
To answer your question, I like the trade, and then to answer your question, Miles, I don't think we would have won the series with Gary Trent Jr. personally.
Next question is from J. Joel Carlos. He goes, so is it only Jason Kidd candidate for head coach? I know we kind of talked about this earlier in the podcast, but we're answering this probably how long since
4 days late.
4 days late, but Jason Kidd is now not going to be an option for head coach. So Jason Kidd, therefore, is not the only candidate. There are so many other candidates. In fact, every other candidate is not Jason Kidd. And I'm happy.
And he was not the only candidate when you asked this question either. Next question, I'm not really sure how to pronounce this name, so I'm just going to spell it. Or
just go for it.
Jihadion _ Jihadion.
Good effort.
She says, whatever you are.
They say.
Let's not get into that. Who do you think we can get or who will leave? We talked about this. We didn't talk about who will leave. Who do you think will leave? I'm going to pull up the contracts while you...
Leave or get traded?
Let's start with leave.
I think we will not offer a new contract to Melo or Canner. And I could be dead wrong saying that. That's kind of what I want. I don't think Melo comes back. I don't think Cantor comes back.
Zach Collins is a free agent. I think we give him a 1-year prove-it deal, personally.
I would like to see that. I think he still has a future with this team. I keep forgetting we have him.
He could be so big for us.
He could have been huge.
Traded. We kind of talked about this. Could see CJ, could see Nurk.
In terms of core guys, I think one of CJ and Nurk gets moved. I really do. That's my gut feeling.
I think Derek Jones Jr. stays.
I think he's going to opt in, but I think he could be trade filler / trade bait to get someone we need. Although if Derek Jones Jr. stays, I would not be mad.
Off topic here, we were talking about this not on the podcast. Say we do get rid of Enes Kanter. Nerlens Noel is a free agent. He was actually the number 1 rated defensive player in the league this year.
If he was our backup center, even if he was the starting center and just didn't close games, like
we want a defensive center no matter what.
Zach Collins, Nurk. Okay, Zach Collins, Noel, and Miles Turner. That's fantastic right there. The thing about Miles Turner is he can shoot threes. He's better than Nurk from the 3-point range.
The only thing he's not better than Nurk at is
probably playmaking.
Like a couple post moves here and there, but Nurk kind of regressing that, and yes, playmaking for sure.
Yeah, Nurk's a fantastic playmaker. But I think Melo can leave. And okay, next question from Tyler.m_05. Should we go for a Kawhi? Should we?
We should.
We should.
Absolutely.
Because Kawhi is a needle mover and makes us title contenders next to Dame instantly. You saw him in Game 7. This was yesterday, Game 7.
How much are you willing to give for Kawhi? Are you willing to part ways with Derek Jones Jr.?
I'm willing to sell CJ, Nurk, Rocco. I'd sell a lot of guys for Kawhi. Do I think we get Kawhi? Hell no. But we should. We definitely should, because he would be the type of help Dame needs. And if Dame can't win with Kawhi, then maybe Dame's just not meant to win a title in Portland. But I do not think we go for Kawhi, but we should.
Next question, 3 more. This is from Cody Plumley7. We already talked about this a little bit, but he says, what do you think about the rumor Cat in Portland? Is that the type of help Dame needs?
So, in my opinion, I think the rumor is nothing but a rumor. So I think
it has no weight to it at all.
I don't think it has no weight to it at all. Stephen A. Smith said he has a source, a.k.a. Stephen A. Smith texted him. I'm just kidding. He texted himself. No, I'm just kidding. But I don't think the rumor has much substantial evidence to it. Now, second part. So honestly, I like the rumor. I like that it gets the wheels moving, gets people starting to think okay, is Dame actually going to get help? I don't mind the rumor. Just I don't want people to get oh my gosh, Cat to Portland. Now, is it the type of help Dame needs? I don't think it's the ideal help, but I think just the fact that Cat's a big name, it would look to the media and everyone that Dame is getting help, and I wouldn't mind that. I think Cat would be let's just think about it. The pick and pop, Dame and Cat, that's disgusting.
Filth.
That's disgusting. You want to add anything to that? You could probably add something to that.
I think Cat is probably similar to the highest level star we could get, or his level. Not the superstar, but a star. A guy that would be a really good second option. I think that he's probably not the best fit with us just because he's not an elite defender. He's a solid defender. I just don't know if you're getting enough from Cat for how much you'll probably have to give up for Cat.
Exactly. I agree with that. Next question. This is from AJJD2. He just, very simple question. Derek Jones Jr. or Carmelo Anthony? Just straight up.
If you heard that, I don't think you did at all.
That was our dog.
Our dog. To answer your question, are we talking this year? Are we talking next year? Are we talking...
I would assume
who would you want on the floor?
I think if you had to get rid of one and keep one,
I'm keeping
for
DJJ.
Next year. I'm keeping Derek Jones Jr. Nothing against Melo, but defense is a huge part of this team going forward. It has to be. And Derek Jones Jr. was our best individual defender, and he did just not even touch the floor in the playoffs. Rondae Hollis-Jefferson can't shoot threes. So if Derek Jones Jr. can't either, play Derek Jones Jr. That was one of the dumbest moves I thought Stotts did, in my opinion.
Yeah, Melo has his moments.
He was our starter at the start of the year.
Yeah. Melo has his moments. He has his big 25-point outburst because he hits 4 threes in a row. But it's not consistent, and it's bad basketball.
Carmelo Anthony's one of the greatest isolation scorers, and he's top 10 in the history of the game in scoring for a reason. But no defense, very slow. He's old, unfortunately. When he scores 17 points on 6 of 9 shooting, that's a good night. But he can't do that every night. Derrick Jones Jr. can go 1 of 5 from the field for 4 points and impact the game because he's a lob threat, in my opinion. And he plays defense, and we need defense. So I'm taking Derrick Jones Jr., and you are too.
It's really tough for me to say. I don't really want to get rid of Melo just because of how much of just an icon he is, and I kind of want him to go out on his own terms. If he retired, I'll be fine. I just don't want to cut him again. If he could just somehow accept the fact that he's just on our team to be a veteran leader, like Dirk was in his last 2 years, you're not going to really play any minutes unless it's a blowout. You're playing garbage time. Just be on the team to be on the team.
Yeah. The problem is when we keep Melo, he kind of almost seems like he's in order to stay, he's being guaranteed minutes per game. This man played crunch time. I guess I know you need the scoring, but you also need some defense in crunch time. And crunch time, half the time, is just Dame making insane 3-pointers. So you don't even need a fifth offensive player on the floor. I don't want to get it. Final question from Slamma Preston, which is kind of a cool name in my opinion. Will we get Kevin Love? You want to go?
No. I think our only chance to ever get Kevin Love was with Hassan Whiteside, which I'm still pissed we never made a move for. I know his value probably sucked, but to answer your question bluntly, no, unless he gets bought out, which is maybe a possibility. I could see that happening.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I don't think we trade for Kevin Love ever. I think the only way is if he becomes a free agent at the end of his fat contract that we want no part of, or he asks to be bought out and he comes here on a vet min, or we sign him for cheap. Because I think at some point he'll want to play for Portland, whether it happens or not. I don't know. As y'all know, Kevin Love is from Lake Oswego. That's where he went. So I could see it. I could see it happening, but it'd be a couple years down the line, in my opinion.
So those are all the questions we had from the Q&A. Shout out to those people who put it on the Instagram. If you don't follow the Instagram and you're somehow finding this podcast without coming from the Instagram,
go follow the Instagram.
.city.rundown. It's also in the description.
And subscribe on YouTube. We're trying to get to 1,000.
We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm just going to throw out a date right here because we want to. Let's try to aim for June 20th. That's in 13 days. That's really hard.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. But Blazer fans, stand up, guys. Stand up, okay? We're going through a transition right now, and
we got all the news.
Got all the news. I am a sucker for Blazers, unfortunately. It's kind of painful, but I love me some Portland Trailblazers. Rip City on the ass.
I think we're on 918 subscribers right now. We gained 13 last day from the Terry Stotts news. So maybe we just need Damian Lillard to be traded so everyone wants to see our reaction. I'm obviously kidding, but we bring Blazer content. We've just posted Blazer mic'd up from the 2020-2021 season if you want to see that. So tell your friends that are Blazer fans to come subscribe. Whether they watch Blazer content or not, they can just listen to this podcast.
Fantastic. That is all we got. Thank you for submitting the questions. We'll do another one probably at some point. It's going to be a long summer until free agency starts. I have to make myself watch other games that are not Blazers, which is unfortunate. But that is it for this podcast. Probably the longest one we've done. Pretty good. We will see y'all later. Peace out.